Hi, all, and thanks for being with me. I just wanted to make a few comments about the terrible incident at Bondi Junction, Westfield, yesterday, and to, I guess, for what it's worth, offer my condolences to the families of those who lost uh, their loved ones under the most unexpected, horrific incident that one could almost imagine. It is unusual here in Australia to have a situation whereby so many people have been murdered in the one instance. And I guess there's a couple of things I actually want to talk about. Number one is that there was a number of people on my ex, on X generally, who wanted to leap to the notion that this was a terrorist attack, that the the perpetrator was of some specific religious background, that he was an immigrant, and so on. And I think it was disturbing because automatically we seem to, or people want to assume, firstly, the worst, and secondly, they want to blame somebody else for it, because had any of those scenarios proven to be true, this person would have been touted as a terrorist, as a Muslim, as somebody that we should be afraid of, which is fair enough because he did kill 5 people. But the reality is that he wasn't any of those things. Yet that was the first place that a lot of people that were on my ex, or through the feeds that came through on X, indicated that he was, without any information whatsoever. So what does it say about our society that the first thing we think of when we see something as horrific as what happened at Bondi, we start to equate it, we start to draw lines between our own prejudices and what we would like it to be to feed into those prejudices and what is actual reality. In other words, we don't want to sit back and think a little bit more about it, to consider that we firstly don't have any information, but we want to jump to these conclusions that equate to our own political or our own sort of values. And I think it's sad because most of us don't do that. And those people that do are looking for a fight. They're wanting to breed hatred in our communities. They want to focus on as terrible as all of this was, and there's lots of negativity around this because so many people lost their lives, and they were just shopping. They weren't in a protest or anything. They were just shopping. They were doing the daily activities, and then some crazy man comes in and decides that he's going to stab people with a knife. I mean, it's horrible, absolutely horrible. But what does concern me is the way people try to build it into something, or hope or wish that it becomes something that's either political or whatever. And I can imagine that had this man been of a specific faith or from a specific background, then everybody would have been attacking, particularly on certain aspects of the media, and individuals would be attacking Albanese for whatever reason, for immigration. I mean, I'll be frank, one of my biggest fears was that this was one person out of the 149 that got released through the High Court case, and how that would have projected itself into something that the Liberal and National Party would have got hold of and made it into something far worse than what it was. And I was grateful that it wasn't. It was terrible about the deaths. No dismissing that, but on the other hand, where this could have gone had this person had a history elsewhere that was more political, then I think it would have been a disaster. And so for those people that are those, and there are lots of them that seem to comment on my YouTube channel. For those of you who do, I just want you to consider how horrible you friggin' are. You are the worst of the worst when you go to places like that without considering the actual evidence. And I saw some posts, I won't bother bringing them up on my X feed, but I saw some posts that were already blaming Albanese for what this man had done. And so there are some people out there who just hate the left, who, you know, not only is it the Liberal Party TV network, namely Sky News, but there are lots of people out there who just simply hate the ALP. And look, I'm, in many cases, I've said this many times before, I'm not a fan of the ALP in certain areas either. I'm not going to, if this was a Liberal Party that was in power, would have I jumped? No, I wouldn't have jumped to these conclusions. I need to wait until there's certain evidence to demonstrate what it is, and then we have a discussion about it, you know. And I also think that the other issue I wanted to raise is this, is that there have been 28 women killed this year by their partners. And that's 28. And I think we just need to take stock of the fact that that is one a week, more than one a week. And yet, yesterday the coverage was all day, and rightfully so. I'm not dismissing that in any way. I just want to draw a comparison between the fact that there's been 28 women who have been killed, murdered, right? And they've left behind their family, their children, whatever, and in some of these cases, the men that have told them have taken their own lives. But the reality is that that is as devastating as the number of people that were killed yesterday. They are still deaths, and there's 28 of them. And we're not having, a whole day discussing, each one of these deaths. No, because this was a mass murder. We see it, we try to see it as it is, because lots of information isn't known. We try to find out that information and so on. Yet we all still need to consider all those women and those families that have suffered as a result of those 28 deaths. They're just as important. And in fact more so, because that is a result of men not being able to control their emotions or understanding how their behaviour impacts other people, because all of those deaths were preceded by behaviour which indicated these controlling and manipulative men. And in this case, at Bondi, we knew nothing about the man. We don't even know anything about whether he had relationships with any of those people that he stabbed or whatever. Probably not, because he came from Queensland. So we need to see, I think, need to compare the number of deaths on this case, which is 6, I think 7 including him, and those 28 women that have died already this year at the hands of their partners or ex-partners. Now, the other issue that I want to raise is basically that Dutton had endeavoured also, so there's an irony in here, in that Dutton had attempted to raise the Albanese government, or Albanese in particular, as being a terrible Prime Minister, because he doesn't, according to Dutton, he doesn't show the same sort of leadership skills as John Howard did, because John Howard in '96, I think it was, he, at the time of the Port Arthur massacre, he withdrew guns from our community, and we had an armistice that ran for years actually, where people could hand in their guns, and he outlawed assault rifles. Now, the thing that needs to be noted about that is that Albanese sought bipartisan, sorry, Albanese, John Howard sought bipartisanship around this, and Beazley was the opposition leader at the time, and he came to the party and he agreed that these assault weapons and rifles and whatever handguns should be outlawed, which we did, rightfully so. So this wasn't just about John Howard making this decision, it was about John Howard working in a bipartisan fashion with the opposition, something that Dutton doesn't seem to understand, I hasten to add. And as a result, the guns were taken out of the community and there hadn't been a mass shooting since. And heaven forbid had at Bondi guns were so easily accessed as they are in the United States, this would have been more horrific than the number of deaths that there were. But the thing to remember, I think, that I always remember about John Howard, who I think is a terrible human being, frankly, and that's not just because he's a Liberal Party member or was Prime Minister, but because he's just a terrible person. And I'm always reminded of the babies overboard scenario that he and Reith became involved in because they wanted to demonise asylum seekers at that particular time. Now, we later on discovered that that was a lie, that did not happen. The boat was simply sinking, and they were trying to save these kids, or the people on the boat were trying to save these kids as well. They weren't throwing them overboard so that they would, so that the boats nearby, the Australian Navy, would rescue them. That wasn't actually the case. But they lied about it, and they did it in order to develop some sort of public sympathy to their cause, which is about asylum seekers. So John Howard's a liar. I don't know whatever John Howard has ever done, apart from the guns, to demonstrate that he was a reasonable human being. He is not, still isn't. The fact that they still seek him out to get whatever responses they need from him to highlight where the Liberal Party is coming from, I'll never know, but they do. But to use this example that Dutton did was horrible. That I can't even understand why he thought that this would be some form of justification to outline Albanese's inadequacies. But he did, and he's received heaps of criticism for it. Now, one of the reasons why he may have done this is because he needed to have some sort of clickbait. He needed the media to stand up and take notice of him. And because the thing that frightens me about Dutton and the Liberal National Party is that they are after division more than anything else. So they need something that divides our country, that pits one side against the other. And that's why the Bondi incident, particularly I guess for me, made me start to wonder, well, would this be their moment? Will this be the time they have an opportunity? And I bet you anything, they were sitting back hoping that this information would come forward about religious affiliations or whatever, so that they could then say, well, this is about Albanese not doing his job. And they must be sitting back now, regardless of the degree of sympathy that they may have for the victims of this and their families. My bet is that they're sitting back thinking, well, I wish it was different, because then we could have made a political point of it. And they haven't been able to do that. Dutton tried to make a political point around the Port Arthur massacre, wasn't able to do so. That fell flat, but clearly, in my opinion, that was his aim, and he failed miserably. But that is his goal. His goal is to try and convince us to hate others, that if they're different from us, if they come from overseas, if they have a different coloured skin, if they're Indigenous people, then we must find reasons to dislike them. And it's appalling, but that's where he's coming from. So let me know in the comments below, and I'm sure some of you will, but let me know what you think down below. And in the meantime, my thoughts are with the families. It's going to be, some of these people will never recover. from what happened yesterday, and you know, our thoughts are with them, and I'm hoping that the appropriate services are provided to help them to recover from all of this. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.